Thank you so much for being here. I'm thrilled to have you today. So Des, to give a little bit of background to everybody, you co-founded Intercom, where you oversee product strategy. You are now the co-founder of FinAI, and you've been in the market for almost 15 years now with Intercom. That has become obviously a standout in the SaaS world, redefining how businesses communicate with their customers. And you've been driving platform scale innovation in a fascinating manner. You are also an angel investor in over 90 companies, including Notion and Miro. So Intercom is one of those rare companies that managed to stay at the forefront of innovation for over a decade. And I think you're still evolving today faster than most startups. And we see that today with Fin.ai. You mentioned in the Lenny's podcast that Intercom has been through a massive inflection point with a company-wide pivot to embrace AI at the core both of your product and your operations. And I think for many leaders in the audience, these are the exact questions they are wrestling with. How to introduce AI into their products and how to simplify rather than complicate, and obviously how to make faster, better decisions without losing the human touch. So I suggest we start there. And I wanted to potentially have you take us back to that moment when you decided to embrace a company-wide pivot to lead with AI. So how did you approach that decision and what have you learned along the way?
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone knows where they were the day ChatGPT launched. It was kind of one of those moments. Technologically, we have very few times in our lives where you see something and it really, I think everyone remembers their first Uber, that type of thing where like something really happened and you're like, wow, technology is here. And for me, like my first kind of bit of play with ChatGPT was the day it launched. I got a ping from somebody on Slack. I think it was probably Fergal, who's our AI leader. And he was basically saying like, you should probably look at this. Kieran, who was one of our co-founders, pinged me to say basically the same thing. And, everyone did the same first few queries, which were kind of like basically slightly fancy Google searches, like, hey, what age is somebody? Oh, look, it answered straight away, that type of thing. But everyone's first play with ChatGPT wasn't that distinguishable from like the sort of the auto box in Google, where it answers your question above the fold or whatever. But it was, so the first question that really had me go, uh-oh, was when I said, like, how do you install Intercom in an iPhone app or something like that? And it replied like in less than 2 seconds with the perfect answer. Obviously they'd read our docs or whatever. But that was where I was like, because we actually do employ support people who answer that question quite a lot. And I was like, this has an impact on the future of support. I kept playing with it, as did loads of people in Intercom. And Fergal suggested we meet the following morning, which I think was a Friday. I think ChatGPT launched either on Thanksgiving or the day after. Anyway, so Friday morning I had a chat with Fergal. Friday afternoon, I spoke with our CEO, Owen, and I was like, yo, the AI guys think there's something here. We think we should build on it. And basically, we spoke all through the weekend. And by Monday, we had agreed that we have to go all in on AI. And we didn't really know what that meant, but it was just like, take this thing very seriously. So on Monday, we had to rip up loads of roadmaps and move loads of people around to say, let's build some AI features. And actually, the first thing we built wasn't Fin. It was a load of inbox features, like things like summarization, changing tone, extrapolation on content that was there. It was like a lot of like what you today call a co-pilot, but we didn't have those words back then. So we built that, and that was wildly popular straight away. And I think we were the first people to actually deploy like proper LLM stuff into a big B2B SaaS app. And very quickly we're like, this is cool, but it's not as cool as what it could be. Now, if you remember at the very start, everyone talked about hallucinations, and that was the big risk. But people, no one wanted to go all in on AI because of the hallucination risk. It was only when we got access to GPT-4 that we realized there was reasonable ways to prompt and guardrail and build a kind of an AI architecture around the core LLM to make sure that basically every single sentence it was returning was based in reality, as in we could find a citable source of verified material that would back up what we were saying we were making it up. So once we could ground all the inferences, we realized we could build something that wouldn't just help the team do their job, would actually do the team's job. And in general, I think like the way I look at AI applications today is there are people who try to like augment a human. There are people who try to take away some of the human's job, and there are people who try to replace the human. And I think everyone starts off doing the baby version, which is like, how do we make it easier to do our analysis or whatever, right? But there's a kind of there's a spectrum there of both like risk and reward. It's really hard to replace a human, but if you can do it, see dropping it a bigger pile of value done as simply something that speeds them up a little bit. So yeah, we we started working with Fin. We launched Fin 12 weeks ago. We launched Fin on GPT-4 launch day, which was, I think, March 13th, 2023. Today, Fin now has like 7,000 customers doing, over 1 million resolutions a week, which we charge $1 a resolution. You can infer the revenue. It's been going pretty well. And our core measure of Fin to see if it actually works is to what degree does it answer questions reliably. And now we're seeing about, if you throw questions at Fin, 65% of the time it'll reply with a perfect answer within a few seconds. And that fundamentally changes the nature of customer service. And bear in mind, our entire previous business was customer service, so the impact was pretty obvious. So in hindsight, it's a good thing we did it. Yeah.
Love it, love it. And if you could also share, did you have some challenges along the way? So are there things that have been more difficult that you planned in your AI strategy? And what are probably some of the biggest challenges you faced since you started working on Fin?
I think the hardest thing that we had to like learn and unlearn was like Intercom historically was a very productive like B2B SaaS company. We were great at UI, we were great at like doing user research and great at building things customers want. We weren't great at understanding uncertainty because, generally speaking, in pre-AI, you were never kind of like crossing your fingers hoping that a feature would be possible. Like if you wanted to add a dashboard to Pigment, you wouldn't be like, oh, I hope the CSS can handle it. Like it was just, you kind of knew you could do what you wanted to do. With AI, we definitely have like bumped into many areas where like, well, I guess the models aren't there yet. Like even like early on, one of the features we wanted to build early on was a thing called smart replies. And the idea was, and this is before GPT-4 to be clear, but the idea was a customer support rep would sit down in their inbox and every reply would be pre-written for them and they just needed to approve or whatever. But actually, it turns out that's quite annoying until your hit rate is extremely high. So like the early releases, GPT 3.5 specifically with the hallucinations and all that, like there's a category of work where to do the work and to verify that the work is correct are too close together such that you're not actually doing enough for the human, right? Like as in, if and you see a lot of these areas, medicine, law, etc., where like if you can't fully trust a thing, the human verification is just as expensive as doing it in the first place. So anyway, we've definitely bumped into challenges like that. And then the bigger challenge, which we can go into if you wish, is just like entirely redesigning how we build software from the bottom up because everything is different now. That was probably painful both culturally and then process wise as well, to try and like basically like go against 13 or 14 years of like robust, well iterated product development process, throw it all away and go again. And like not everyone liked it, obviously.
Did you thinking about that, like if you were today an AI native startup starting, like I would say, Fin.ai from scratch, are there things you would do differently or would you think about it the same way?
I think if we, one of the mistakes we made early on was we didn't build Fin on top of Zendesk or on top of Service Cloud very early on. It took us a year to realize that opportunity was there. I think we should have, like, if we weren't Intercom, we would have had to have done that. And that would have been a good thing. But we caught up and we realized the opportunity. Basically, like, I think moving source of truth platforms like your support stack or your CRM or maybe like your business insights tool or whatever, it's really tricky. And people really want to do it, but they just can't get over the line to do it. Like we have so many people who are like, oh God, I wish I could use Intercom, but the guy before me picked such and such a tool and we can't switch over. And like they hope one day to get there. And then when we released Fin, what we got it was a lot of like, oh my God, that's the thing we really want. When are you ever going to make that available? And like, that was the thing that we realized we kind of just got wrong. We thought initially that the magnetic pull of Fin would be big enough such that it would pull everyone away from their like entrenched help desk, like Freshworks or Zendesk or Service Cloud or whatever it might be, and that they'd all come running over to our world. Instead, what we got was a lot of like, flirty eyes and like longing looks, but no action, but not enough migrations, if you know what I mean. So then when we released Fin to actually work on those platforms, it took off real quick because everyone's like, oh, I can just paste an API key and get all the benefits of Fin on top of my existing help desk. And then the funniest part, the piece we didn't expect as much that has proven interesting is once Fin is doing 60 or 70% of the work, actually the help desk demands come down quite a bit. And as a result, the migration gets a lot easier. So I think we got to a good place, but we definitely took a more difficult route than we had to.
I see. That's fascinating. Thank you for sharing. So you've started to talk about some hard decisions you had to make at Intercom to create Fin. I'd love to get your insight and perspective on AI and decision making in organizations today. So how do you think AI is transforming the way companies, whether it's a tech company or other companies, should think through and action strategic decisions based on AI? So we'd love to get maybe your perspective on that, on how people should think in general about their strategy there.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing I notice that the companies who have adapted best to AI is that they kind of use it everywhere in really, really smart ways. And one example of this is there are still like product teams who will scratch their head and be like, I wonder what the user wants. And the better ones will go and talk to users and they'll do some research. But then they'll be like, well, okay, I think we understand the problem. I wonder what a good solution would be like. And I think like AI massively decreases the cost of exploration. And I think the best products, the best marketing, the best probably sales tactics, so many areas are like improved by exploring the solution space. There are loads of ways you could, build a product. There are loads of UI choices you could make. There are loads of ways you could like design a landing page. And I think like the reason we don't a lot of the time like explore 5, 6, 7 is because it's just expensive. It's, you don't have that many designers. So I mean, if you do it sequentially, it takes a long time. But we've gone kind of gone all in on the city of like using AI as a kind of a look forward tool. So to give you a very simple example, we like vibe code the entire roadmap before we approve it. And that sounds crazy, but it's actually not that hard. So if we say like, hey, here's what the future of help desk looks like, we're going to add X, Y, and Z. Here's what the future of Fin is. Here's all the stuff we're doing for Fin to do sales queries or whatever. We literally like will spec all that out and actually get like, either Lovable or Bolt or like pick your vibe coding tool. A lot of the cases it's Claude Code for us. But we'll actually kind of like, we'll get to a point where we're like, right, that looks roughly like what we're going to build. How do we feel about that? And do we think it's worth the effort? And these things are like way more valuable than like, scratchy designs or like wireframes. They're actually interactive things. And I think you can do the same with marketing. You can do the same, like you can even do the same with like marketing strategies, variations of ads and all that sort of stuff. So I think the best decisions come from the best choices. And AI has simplified choice creation. It has not perfected it. Like I think I always draw the distinction between like an indicative direction you could go and a great design or a great product or whatever. There's a guy, he was a lead researcher at Microsoft called Bill Buxton. He had this beautiful diagram where he explained the difference between exploring the solution space and then iterating to perfection. And he described it as you first of all get the right design and then you get the design right. And I think when you're exploring, you're looking for the right thing to build. And then when you're iterating, you're building it really, really well. And I think that's so much more doable here now in 2025 than it ever was before. So I think like in every single sort of decision you're making in a company, you're almost always faced with multiple options. It's not a decision if there's not multiple options in some sense. The question is how much information can you get about each of these options to look forward and to think about impact on whatever it might be, cash flow or product scope or UI or whatever. And AI almost always can offer you a kind of a time machine style look ahead. And if you may as well take that because it might be nothing, but oftentimes we find it gives you a really clear either problem with a direction you're going in or like obvious solution that becomes like even better looking the more you iterate. But I think like there's a real opportunity there that I find a lot of leaders don't take. And I say leaders specifically because I think ICs have actually been, partially because they're under pressure, they've adapted to AI pretty quick. But I think a lot of senior leaders think that like AI is something for the kids, like they don't actually focus on it and think about how it should inform them. Like everyone can say how AI will make an engineer a better engineer or a designer a better a designer. Can AI make a VP or a C-level person a better VP or C? It absolutely can. But like it's one of these like AI for thee, but not for me type of attitudes. You need to get through that and you need to actually say, hey, I need to be an AI enabled VP of design, product, finance, whatever it is. And if you're not, you're going to be replaced by somebody who is.
And do you have actually some concrete examples for back office operations too, like finance, you think about HR, revenue operations, like do you have concrete examples on how AI is going to enable them through your framework? Because I really love the framework you just described.
The one that comes to mind most, we think about a lot about pricing and packaging of AI features. And in these cases, there are like, there are loads of different ways you can price AI. You can like mark up tokens, you can put it as a seat add-on, you can do outcome-based pricing like we do with Fin, you can do outcome-based add-on with a volume component as well. You can do loads of these things. And like when you know your customer growth rate, let's say you add 1,000 customers every couple of months and you know you've got like 10 for easy maths, let's say you know you've got 10,000 already. You can actually have AI pretty quickly say, you can say, hey, suggest all the different ways this can be priced, and it'll do a pretty good job because you can tell it, please go and read all the relevant material, go and study the Simon Kucher playbooks, go and read Kyle Poyar, whatever you want, right? Get all the material you need, load all that in, suggest all the different pricing components, model them all out, project revenue, attach revenue, go forward revenue, NRR, whatever it might be that you actually care about. Under all of these scenarios, build me an interactive dashboard with sliders where I can adjust the price of the add-on and change the seat and all that sort of stuff. And basically, like you can get to and again, you can do all this in like 3 hours sitting down with Claude. You know, like this is not historically. This would have been you hand this over to your biz ops team, and in 2 weeks' time they come back with a presentation. Now you hand this over to yourself, and in 3 hours' time you come back with an interactive tool that lets you scope out loads of different go forward scenarios. And I just think that's one simple example that I have firsthand experience of, where the speed of decision making and the quality of decision making are far faster. It is like truly like the better, faster, cheaper type thing. And for us, we're like, I think that's quite a relevant one, because I think everyone's asking about AI pricing and all that sort of stuff right now. And like, it's so funny when they're like, oh, we've built a breakthrough AI price, but now I'm talking to you, Des, because I need to know how to price it. And I'm like, well, would you not use AI to work that bit out? Or at least, and again, it's not worked it out, but it's explored a solution space. And you might realize that like, oh, if we do add-ons while seats are going down because we're busy replacing all the seats, then maybe that's a great solution. And you're like, oh, okay, like you'll see inherent tensions and conflicts that you would have caught in a different way if you threw humans at it, but it might have taken you 6 weeks.
That's great. And obviously you announced, I think that's a good segue into your decision to make out-based pricing. So maybe my question is now irrelevant given what you just said. Probably everybody should just ask AI, but you said actually that this idea of outcome-based pricing is a big differentiator. And you even said, like, I'm going to quote you, it's putting your money where your mouth is. So can you maybe tell us a little bit more about what motivated that shift? And what does it signal about AI value capture?
There was a load of sort of complexity we were faced with when we had to price Fin. Yeah. At the time, tokens were a lot more expensive. So we were kind of like, well, we have to charge for this, right? Like, and initially, the first wave of GPT 3.5 tokens were quite expensive. So it was going to be, our initial price point for Fin was, I think, $1.99 or $1.49 or something like that, before we quickly brought it down to 99 cents, where it is now. But why outcome versus anything else? Well, one reality is, if Fin succeeds, there will be less CS people in the future. So seats on your help desk will go down. Intercom sells hundreds of millions of seats on a help desk. So Fin is a very cannibalistic, hostile product to our core business. That's just the reality of the situation. So when we're charging for a product that is going to replace the other product, the calculus has to work. So when you look at an average CS rep who might handle, say, like maybe they handle 200 tickets a week, 40 a day, maybe it's a bit less. So maybe that's 800 tickets a month, and let's just discount for holidays and all that, say 500 tickets a month. Intercom, for that person handling 500 tickets a month, we would get, say, $80 for the seat. Now, what can Fin do in that scenario? Well, we like the idea of Fin getting to 100% resolution rates, but we also know that that's not possible. And anyone who says, sorry, it's not possible in most scenarios, and anyone who says it is basically lying, or they don't really understand AI. But right now, Fin does like 65%. So 65% of 500 is more than $80. So as a result, in a world where Fin kills that seat, we make more, and our customer is happier too. Our customer is like, doesn't have to buy the seat, nor do they have to potentially, they can downsize their support team or stop growing it over the fullness of time. So that, like, there was a kind of like lots of things to factor in here. And then a lot of our competitors do just total conversation volume. I think that the challenge with that, now, you know, there's challenges with outcome-based pricing too, to be clear, and we can talk about that as well. The challenge with total conversation volume is that I think your incentive is not as pure as it should be. Like, you're just not, your product can get no better, and you're going to keep getting more money, right? Like, whereas for us, like when we, the biggest thing we care about is making Fin do as much support as possible. So that's all the channels, all the like types of queries, etc. We like, you know, we want to maximize Fin involvement everywhere, and then we want to bring up its resolution rate as high as possible. And that's exactly what our customers want us to do too. So like in that regard, we're quite aligned. And so like that was the thing we liked about it. I will say it like there's complexity, or sorry, there's gotchas to like outcome-based pricing. Not all outcomes are the exact same. Like sometimes we might have to do like 27 different steps, and sometimes it might be a very simple answer. And then also Fin does phenomenal amounts of work but still ends up handing over to a human. So it might answer 7 questions in a row, getting the customer really, really happy, but then the customer says, okay, you know what, I've decided I don't want a refund, I want to upgrade. And then the rules might say, hey, hand the one over to a human. In that case, we get 0, even though we've burnt a load of tokens and done a load of work. So like there are no silver bullets here, but I do encourage everyone to kind of explore the solution space properly and just think about all the different types of scenarios.
Yeah, I think that will probably resonate with the audience. And when you think about how to run a company more smoothly in the world of AI, you started to touch base on that earlier, but I was wondering, where do you see some of the biggest opportunities that AI creates for enterprise software companies in general today, beyond what you described earlier on the sort of out of the possibility process that you go through?
I think the biggest opportunity is really to just reimagine your company in a way where the speed of progress is extremely, extremely fast. And I think people don't think about the speed of iteration enough. Like if 2 different people are working on a project and one of them gets through 10 iterations and the other person gets through 1, it doesn't actually matter if each iteration is like worse than it would have been. If they're doing 10 of them, they're going to end up beating the other person anyway. It's kind of like, it's well understood or like well documented that like the like feedback and like rapid iteration is usually the path to quality and quantity. So what's that mean in practical terms? I think every function, like if you're, you know, marketing, sales, finance, product, engineering, you know, design, they can all benefit from AI tooling. And the tooling is there in most cases. In most cases, there's some stuff there that at a minimum will massively increase the efficiency of the people involved. And efficiency in a business is basically leverage. It's like opportunity on the future. It's like you can do more with less. It gives you, you know, ultimately like it'll, you know, make your company more valuable if you need to, you know, burn less cash to do more things, right? So efficiency is no joke alone. So if there's like a way where your finance team can like get through quarter end faster with AI, can like approve decisions faster, can go through procurement faster, anything that can improve the operational cadence of the business is going to be massively valuable. And you need to like kind of understand that like the pace of the business is actually very correlated with the success or the probability of success. If you can outpace your competitors and across everything, you're almost always going to have a huge opportunity to win. The second thing is you can obviously just do more with less. So, you know, if you look at new startups who are founded, say from like 2024 onwards, like specifically that cohort where the tooling was there, the tooling wasn't there in 2023, right? You know, there wasn't great opportunities. Like Fin was only new as one example, but like there wasn't a lot of tools. Today, there are like AI-enabled marketing creative products. There are AI-enabled support. There's AI-enabled sales. There's AI-enabled finance. There's AI-enabled ITSM. So every single kind of corner of your company can basically be a lot more efficient than it used to be before. And that usually means historically and probably still today, you have more opportunity to deploy your capital in ways that are like more strategic and less kind of run the books or whatever type work, which might mean you can grow a bigger product team, might mean you can spend more on advertising, but it means you can deploy capital in a way to back up your strategy as opposed to just like fueling the engine, if you know what I mean, right? And I think the way you get there is you have to kind of blank page your business. You have to sit down and say, right, if I was starting a brand new business today, what would I do? And forget about the fact that you're on like a 3-year contract with Salesforce and you've got 100 people doing something over here and you've already decided this and that and the other. And just say, what tools would we actually use? What bits are important? What bits aren't? What product will we build? How would we run marketing? How would we run sales? Would we run sales like the way it is today, with an army of SDRs and AEs and RMs, or would we reimagine those roles to be more convergent and say, hey, you know what, turns out there's some pretty good AI customer success tools. There's some pretty good AI SDR tools. We're building one right now. Like you can you can probably reimagine all of these roles. I suspect what you'll see is more generalist roles, less speciality roles, if you like. You'll probably see smaller teams. You'll probably see higher quality of output, but definitely higher quantity of output relative to the dollars you put in. And I think that's the opportunity that's there. But you have to be willing to like ask yourself really hard questions, like blank paging your business and actually asking like, what are the essential ingredients here, and what tooling should we use? And what I find is a lot of people, they say that they're going to do that, but they kind of bail out because it gets a bit scary and hard to think about all of the organizational transform they might have to go through, or like ripping up their roadmap or canceling a contract that they just signed or any of that type of stuff, right? There's like, you need to be somewhat fearless and fierce about actually doing this. If you try to like I often say, if it doesn't hurt, you're not doing it right. Honestly, like it's a painful process to go through. You have to go almost too far to know that you've gone far enough in this journey. And again, like either you correct your business with AI or the market will correct you. Like it's not like you're not saving any sort of like you're not saving yourself from the pain. You're swapping a short-term acute self-inflicted pain, which is we're going to adapt to AI, from a long-term chronic pain, which is that we're going to fizzle away and die into irrelevance because other companies are going to make different decisions that will be more efficient than ours. That's the choices. Like it's there's no choice where do nothing and succeed is actually on the table. That is not an option.
Yeah, I cannot agree more. And in that context, how do you think AI actually changed the buy versus build? Because we know that for many enterprises, there are areas where they have preferred to build themselves for many reasons that we know about. So how is that changing, and how everybody should start thinking about that differently today?
I mean, this is probably one of the biggest frustrations. We share a lot about how we build Fin and what we've put into Fin, and we have this whole research blog on our fin.ai/research page, because we want people to understand ultimately, like, this is not an easy product domain. And in fact, most product domains aren't particularly easy. Everyone kind of has a dabble in AI, and they're like, oh, look, I built a little thing that can generate me 10 different landing pages or whatever, right? And like, that's cool. It's fun. It was probably an internal hackathon. I hope everyone had fun doing it. But there's a real difference between that and like the best landing page creator, which would still only cost you maybe whatever, like let's say it's $1,000 a month. It's still worth it to have the problem really solved. And I think the nature of the build versus buy, I would ask just a few questions. Like, one is like, do you actually really understand the complexity of the product domain that you're building? Customer support is like not as straightforward as it looks. Everyone can build very quickly, like the kids on Hacker News very quickly will build a product that can answer how do you reset your password. That bit's easy. That's not what support is. Support's quite hard, quite complicated, quite messy. The opening question the user doesn't self-identify. They tend to just say things like this is broken or what's going on, and you have to like disambiguate. So you have to build all of these different subsystems. Like Fin, I think, has like 27 or so different subsystems in it to make Fin work. We're constantly adapting that architecture, and we're tuning every single subsystem, and we're training models for each one of these subsystems. Like we've doing a lot of post training on LLMs, specifically for things like RAG or for things like disambiguation, clarification, etc. So we do so much work to make sure that, and that's where like everyone can get to like 20 or 30% resolution rate. That's not hard. It's also not worth deploying. The actual thing that's really worth doing is getting into like 65, 70, 75, 80, and then building a whole management system around it. Now, that's just customer support. There's examples of this for sales and success and finance and all that. The thing I would say is most people underestimate the domain, the complexity of the domain. But even if they got that bit right, I turn around to a lot of these businesses and I say, like, what is your actual business here? Like, and they'll say, well, we work on, so, we are like let's just say a B2B dashboard for like calculating sales quotas. And I'm like, should you not go and build that as opposed to building a cool little CS project that is never going to be as good as somebody who focuses on it full time? So there's a weird strategic misdeployment of resources. At Intercom, we have this phrase we use all the time, and we actually wrote a whole blog post about it, just called "Run Less Software." And the idea is like, the majority of your R&D, the majority of your talent should focus on advancing your strategy, not on replacing internal tools to shave a few grand off. There are some cases, I think Klarna might be an example, and maybe there's some businesses where the margins are so razor thin and the product is basically finished, that what the new strategy is, they won't say it out loud, but the new strategy is run around the houses trying to shave a nickel off here and there and everywhere. And in those cases, it might actually make sense to go and start replacing tools, go build your own Slack, go build your own Jira, whatever it might be, right? I understand the motivation there, but you just have to be honest that like, hey, we're in cost cutting mode. The strategy is done, and now we're in cost cutting mode. Totally fine. I get it. That's no problem. And you might then find, yeah, there's a bit of money to be saved and not a substantial drop in quality. 99% of the businesses in the world are not in that case. They should probably buy the best products on the market, and they should probably use all of their R&D resources or the product design engineering to advance their strategy and make sure they win.
I used to work for Google, and I remember we were building a lot, and that was a big frustration for me. I was like, cannot we just put all of our engineers towards what really will make a difference tomorrow instead of trying to build in finance or in operations, etc. So I'm totally with you there. I think another important topic probably here is when it comes into buying, and when you are in the buyer's shoes, you've recently said that the great AI companies have all four of these: real usage, real business impact, deep plus differentiated AI, strong margins. Mm-hmm. So if you put yourself in the buyer's shoes, how can you discern the real from the fake, especially given AI is so new and products are obviously continuously evolving?
Yeah. So if you're in the buyer's shoes, I think the first thing, like everyone is lying in this era of AI. That's one of the big problems, right? Like we just the amount of people who will claim that their product does X, Y, and Z, and ultimately we all know it doesn't, or it works on one golden path scenario that's basically never going to happen. And you see, like even the big companies struggle with this, like as in the demos we saw of, say, Apple Intelligence early on were like quite impressive, but that product is yet to show up because AI is really, really hard. It's really hard to know what's possible to build. So I think the first thing you have to do is work out, does this product actually work as a buyer? And the only real evidence, because no one's going to say, hey, our product's a little bit brittle, or like, hey, it works on golden paths only. Surprisingly, those quotes don't make it onto the landing page, right? So the best thing you can look for is like testimonials, real customer evidence, real stats, real measurements, and really happy customers. That's the first thing you have to see, and like lots of them. Right? That's like, it's easy to get 2 or 3 happy customers when you know them or whatever. It's hard to get 7,000. Like it's 7,000 is a real sort of like right. You're not just family and friends at this stage, right? You're actually solving real problems. So that's the first thing, is like, does the product really work? And that will usually show up as real usage. The next thing I think is like, is it actually going to solve a deep problem for your business, or is it just a trinket or a little toy? Like, and the way I often just define that is just like, every product you adopt makes the number go down or up in your business. Maybe sometimes it'll be both, right? But what's going to happen? Like, what does the business look like after a successful rollout of this product? Will costs go down? Will profits go up? Will customer engagement go up? Will customer satisfaction go up? Will like complexity go down? Will speed go up? Something has to change, and you have to believe that, and you have to have a good understanding of what the value of that change is to your business, so that you can understand the price and you can actually factor in if this is an actual worthwhile deployment. The other thing I'd say is like on the third trait, if you like, which is like this like deeply differentiated AI, like customers don't need to necessarily care about that, like if you're just buying, but the reason you might is, one, it's relevant in the build versus buy thing. If you could literally just shell this out to ChatGPT, then there's no point of buying a product for it. But I think what you need to know is, have they built a powerful enough AI architecture to model all of the versions of this problem, and are they taking AI seriously? And again, like, there are lots of companies who have done this extremely amazing pivot where they just add the word AI onto their homepage and call themselves an AI company. But really what you want to know is like, does this company have enough AI chops, enough ability, enough evidence of like successful AI software development, such that they're going to be the terminal winner in this category? So if you're buying a new finance, marketing, sales, support tool, you want to make sure you've picked a winner, and you don't want to have to hot swap tools every like 2 to 3 months, whatever. So what you're looking for there is just like, is there a reason to believe that these people are actually good at AI? And then on the margin piece, again, like the customer should only concern themselves to the degree that it's that it won't kill the business, right? Like, as in, no one likes to like do a full wall-to-wall deployment of a business and then watch it flop. So like the thing you have to care about is like, are they like burning like millions and millions of tokens to deliver you a single thing for like a single cent or whatever? If like cool if they are, there might be some like sure that might seem profitable, but the challenge there is just like they're not going to stick around forever. So you have to like at some stage one of two things is going to happen. That business is going to die, in which case this whole project has been a fail, or they're going to ratchet up the prices, which is fine, but just make sure you know what that pricing dynamic looks like, because your calculus around, hey, this is really worth buying, might change if they 10x their prices.
Yeah, I think that's clearly a danger that can happen. So if you think actually about that and about areas where maybe companies are overestimating the AI potential impact, do you see already some areas where you think actually that the ROI might not be that great, or where we haven't seen yet the innovation that we will yet see in the future?
I think there's definitely areas where it's been slower to kick in, and then there's also areas where people will often misrepresent what actually matters. So like, it's not substantially obvious to me how like an AI HR tool is going to like dramatically change a company. Like, I think in a lot of these cases, you might just end up simplifying UI down to a single agent, or like a chatbot, basically, where you say simple things. Like, it's not that that's not useful. It probably will make people more likely to engage with your HR tool, but it's not like the bottom line impact is not substantial. I don't think like no business is going to win or lose or even draw because of those decisions. It comes down to like, how important is it for any given business that this thing works? Like, all AI basically does, it replaces work. And the questions you should ask yourself is, how much work does it replace? And what quality does it replace it at? So it's doing loads of work for you. How much work and how good is the work? And there are some areas where, frankly, it just doesn't matter. As in it's if you take any, say, software startup, it probably doesn't really matter what they're like, what the system for a guest who wants to check into the office is. There's no real like upside there if we AI to hell out of that. We could get like Ilya and Sam Altman and Satya and everyone to build the best system there. It just probably doesn't matter, right? Like, it's not relevant to the overall impact of the business. It's any more than this microphone I'm talking into is or whatever. So like, I think you have to understand where the AI opportunities are. And right now, like there's like AI is either replacing work or it's creating new opportunities that we've never seen before. And the replacing work stuff is really easy. It's just, where's there loads of work that can be done to a high degree of quality with AI? And then the new opportunities tends to be a lot more white space. This is like questions like what is possible now that was never possible before because of what AI can do? And there are some interesting things, like, for example, our entire design team now writes code. We didn't train them how to write code. They don't literally write code, but they're now the owners of the front end. That's something that was like never possible before. We were never going to spend money on doing that, but now that happens. There are similar examples, like, would Pigment be better if every single user had its own like one-to-one concierge agent who'd walk it through every single aspect of the thing and was there all the time? Yes, it would, but it's never historically been profitable for you to do that, because you've got loads of end users and you can't employ like thousands of people or whatever. But now it's possible. And like, sort of, there are things that are possible today that were just never like profitable or feasible or like sensible to do. And they're like the sort of areas where there's opportunity for my mind. And as I said, the areas where I think, there's like the least amount of opportunity is just in these sort of secondary or ancillary jobs, where it either doesn't matter or the AI doesn't offer any substantial speed or power up or whatever.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think going back to what you said earlier about like fear of adopting AI combined with what you just said, what are the advice then that you would give to executives trying to build a culture that embraces experimentation with AI? What are the advice you would give for them to do that while obviously staying very strategic and also not going into every single direction there?
Yeah, I think something weird happened in tech over like the era of like, let's say 2012 to 2022, where culture felt like a perk, if you know what I mean. And I will get to your question, don't worry. But like, culture felt like a perk. By that I mean it was like a nice thing you could have in the company. But actually, culture has a job to do, which is it sets a non-process standard for how things work. And when the people talk about company values, they're often written in this extremely like beautiful, flowery, nice sounding thing, like we care for each other or whatever, right? And like that's just, you know, in loads of cases, it's just manners written in fancy English. But actually, I think the job of culture is to say, like, how, in non-process ways, what is our general operating assumption of standards and behavior and attitude and mindset and all that. And you can say like, hey, a part of our culture is we're optimistic. But you have to, if you actually say that, you have to then manage people against it. You have to like fire pessimistic people, promote optimistic people. Like if that's what you care about, that you have to enforce it. So if you want a culture of experimentation, you have to say, we want a culture of experimentation, and you change your values and you do things like when you're assessing an engineer or designer or, you know, financial analyst, you say, well, how did you solve this problem? How much did you experiment? Did you explore the solution space? How much did you use AI? You have to kind of be pretty deliberate about it. I think a lot of people are kind of hoping they'll like, you know, a lot of CEOs will like tweet a lot about AI and hope the team gets the message. And I'm like, no, you have to actually tell them your job now involves AI. Like our CTO, Dara, wrote this memo called 2X, where he said by February 1st, 2026, every engineer must have doubled their productivity using AI. That's, you're now going to be performance managed against that. And that's the real way you say you want a culture of AI engineering, right? The fake way of saying it is to say, hey guys, here's some cool tools and we're going to have a hackathon on Friday, right? And that's what most people do. So the first and most important thing, I think, if you are an exec out there who wants their team to adopt AI and change its culture towards one of experimentation and AI adoption, first thing you have to do is say that that's the job and then manage against it. And actually, it's not an optional nice to have. It's not a cool toy. It's something that we're now going to do, right? And most people stop at that point, right? And because what hits them is the anxiety of, oh, the employees might not like it, or geez, that sounds a bit harsh, or, you know. But like the reality is, if that's what you want, you have to do it. Again, either you correct your company or the market corrects you. That's your choice. So the second thing is then you have to work out where are the areas that are most exploitable, right? Where is there either most upside in terms of new things that weren't previously possible, or where is there most upside in terms of things like ripping costs out of the business or removing slow processes or anything like that. So that's where, like, you know, the job of CEO is to like make the trade-offs across all these things. There will be times when you say, this thing can be 90% cheaper and only 2% worse. I will make that trade-off, right? There'll be times when you say, hey, we're going to spend an extra 10% here, but I think the impact could be like 50% on growth. And so you're making these trade-offs everywhere. But ultimately what you're looking for is like, can we replace work with AI? And the answer is almost always yes. Almost always yes. Or is there new stuff that will accelerate our business that was never possible before that AI makes possible? New types of advertisements, hyper-personalized landing pages, and AI-generated videos customized to the individual user, a concierge agent, like a, you know, proactive support, you name it, right? These are all things that are possible in a post-AI world that were never possible before. And then the exec's job is to sort of say, where do they want to plant their chips? Like, where you can't do all the things, and not all the things are worth doing, but where's the biggest upside? Where's the biggest leverage on your business that you can actually apply it? So I think that's the two things. It's like, one is just, you have to be kind of firm about we're going to be an AI company, and that will be painful. And if it's not painful, it's because you've diluted your message too much. And then the second thing is, here are the biggest bets we want to make. We think we can replace X with Y, or we think we can do this new thing that was never previously possible. And then obviously, if you are a software company, there's a third piece, which is we have to go and build an AI version of our product, which is a whole different conference talk, if you like. But yeah.
Really, really agree with everything you say. And also, I think it's clearly something that I've seen in many tech companies too, but not done super right. And it's really the next opportunity for all of us. I think one of the concrete things that I would love to hear also from you is, do you have concrete tips around like operating models? Now that you've done that, maybe you've changed your culture, you are starting to hire the right people, that you've think about, like you've been thinking enough about your big bets. Like, how do you adjust then your operating model with that and your decision-making process? Do you have some tips about that?
Let me think. Like, I think everything flows from, like, you know, mission, vision, and strategy. So I think like that's the first thing you need to kind of update for a post AI world is like, why do we still matter? And for us, it was very obvious we had to do that because like obviously customer service was the first on the chopping block, but it's going to come for everyone, right? If you're out there thinking you're safe, don't worry, your day will come. So you update your vision, like what world are you trying to create, your mission, what are you doing in that world, your strategy, how do you go about doing it? After that, then you're into like actual operations, which is like, hey, how do we break up projects? How do we identify meaty tasks? How do we do resource allocation? How do we set deadlines? How do we orchestrate the company to actually achieve shared outcomes? I think like, I suspect the biggest change here should be in terms of cadence. You should be getting more done faster. But there's one other thing I would say in the AI time, which is that there's a lot more uncertainty in a business post AI than there was pre-AI. The biggest examples are like, new models drop all the time, and sometimes they change things. Lately, they haven't been changing a lot, but sometimes they do. They will change things substantially. And the things they change might be more subtle. It might just be like, hey, that doesn't mean anything new for us, but for a new competitor born today, they're going to get to like step 5 very quickly because of that model, whereas we had to do all the hard work, So there'll be loads of examples like that. Or it'll be like, hey, we already have that outcome, but this is a way simpler architecture that we could adopt that will now skip through a lot of our inherent complexity. So there's a lot more uncertainty thrown at you. And then there are still like lists of things that we would like to see be extremely reliable and extremely performant that is not yet there. We have to constantly check ourselves and be like, has anything changed in AI that makes this really, really possible now? So I would guess, like, so to go back to the top idea, like it's update your mission and vision and your strategy. If you haven't done that post AI, it's already too late probably. But when you get into operations, I think like at Intercom, we don't plan. We used to plan yearly roadmaps. We don't do that anymore because it's just too far to look ahead. There's just too many rapid iterations, too many new competitors, too many changes in scope. Also, like there's this idea of convergence, like companies that shouldn't look like they're competing with each other are now starting to bleed into each other. Like who would have thought that like Gemini, Glean, and ChatGPT would all have the same new tab product that is going to do your internal knowledge search? They're all doing it. Like Notion too. Like like that space is extremely popular. So I think you're gonna have new competitors. You're gonna have like new model drops, just new risks in general. Because of that, I would shrink the sort of look ahead of the business. For if you were previously talking in terms of like years and 2 years and 3 years, I'd probably think more in like 6 months or so, because that's about as long as you should spend on something before you touch base with reality. And so the implications there can be frustrating because your sales team might rely on yearly roadmaps for how they sell and all that sort of stuff. All that has to change too. So yeah, I do think there's a substantial impact to operations, mostly around just you probably need more cycles and shorter cycles, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. There is a topic you touched base on a bit earlier, and I think is a good follow-up question, is around the importance of simplicity, which I know is a big thing for you, and you are one of the best innovators in the world today in the tech ecosystem, and you've been speaking a lot about simplicity in product design. So also wondering how people should think about simplicity in this new world when they build product, and how do you think AI is going to help them enhance simplicity in product design?
Yeah, I mean, there's a role that we kind of invented at Intercom called an AI designer, and their job is to kind of solve a problem that at its core is to solve for simplicity. So there are loads of scenarios in most software, whether it's B2B or B2C, where like we need the user to fill in a form or suggest or offer some information or connect some stuff in order to move them forward. And generally speaking, historically, for like 40 years, the software industry has kind of flow charted this out. Step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the different data we collect, if we fork, where we fork, why we fork, all that sort of stuff, right? And I think the nature of like, if you apply your old software design process, you'll just end up recreating that with AI, and it'll be a little bit faster, maybe a bit more clever. But really what you need to do is ask, what is the absolute minimum input we need from the user to get to a successful outcome? The absolute minimum. And how do we then design a UI that reflects that? And ultimately, that is the process of simplification from an end user perspective. Now, people often talk about simplification everywhere. Like ultimately, the simplicity you care about is actually what your customers experience. That's like, you'll tolerate any amount of pain for a happy customer, right? That's the nature of the business, or you should. So really what you should try to do in your business, and specifically in your product, is say, what's the least that we need of the customer? And then you design the optimal UI to get that absolute minimum out of them. And so I'll give you one interesting example. It might be a little bit like nerdy, but like one of the things you can do with Fin is you can give it guidance. You can say, hey, behave like this, talk like a formal lawyer, talk like a surfer, or whatever you want to do, right? You can teach Fin its behavioral sort of patterns. And we, in the pursuit of simplicity, we managed to shrink all this down to just one text area. We were like, just tell us what you want Fin to do. And actually that was too simple, because people would just write in, they wouldn't write in enough, and it would just all be like kind of fun stuff. But actually what we needed them to write in was, hey, when do we escalate? Why do we escalate? What topics do we never mention? How do we talk about this? What happens if somebody asks for a comparison against a competitor? Blah, blah. We actually needed them to answer all those things. So we were in this trading zone of like, the single text box is very simple, but we had to actually add in a little bit more complexity on the user side to force them to answer specific questions. So we ended up, I think there's like now 3 text boxes, but they're each titled differently. Now tell us about guidance. And now lastly, tell us about this. Actually, the funny thing is, on the back end, we just slurp all that together, because we actually didn't care about the fact that it's 3 different things. It was just, we had to expose some complexity to the customer to get them to think correctly about what they're trying to do. But generally speaking, the job of the AI designer is to say, how far can the AI bring the product without any input from the user? At like a reliable, like 99 point whatever % reliability you might need. You can probably sacrifice some reliability in certain domains. And really, everything else is just, how do we simplify and simplify and simplify? And if you can do it really, really well, what you'll get is extremely high conversion rates, because people don't hit speed bumps during sign up. They don't hit speed bumps during onboarding or like new project creation or whatever it is your software does. So there's a huge benefit in terms of just general product engagement. There's a huge benefit in terms of speed to value. So like, if you have a trial thing and you can manage to simplify it, like one of the things Fin does really nicely is we can literally import your help center and give you a demo of Fin within about 4 or 5 minutes or something like that, however long it takes to drink all that in and train in it, or like get the RAG set up, etc. Once we do all that, we can show you value, and that alone increases conversion rate. So you can grow your business through simplicity. You can increase customer satisfaction through simplicity. The other thing that like people, and this is slightly more co-piloty, but like, no one should need to know how to use Pigment in the future, for example, right? They should just need to know how to explain what they want to do. And I see this a lot. Like, there are people doing this for, say, Excel type things, where I don't particularly know lots of Excel commands, but I know what it is, what I want to do. I want to get a rolling 7-day average of such and such a thing. I just don't remember all the different ways to do it. In a post-AI world, I should never have to learn that. I should just basically explain what I'm trying to do, and it should be able to do it. Like, UI used to be the translation layer between what the user wants to do and what code understands. UI in a post-AI world, a lot of UI is going to be replaced by text, which all of a sudden means everyone's an expert in Excel or Workday or NetSuite or whatever it might be, right? Everyone should be able to just use these tools to get whatever it is they need. And I think that type of simplification will massively increase the sort of the TAM of your product. If everyone can use Excel to do dope stuff, then you have a lot more would-be users. And I just think that's the piece people forget about with simplicity. If you can make things easier to do, more people can do it.
This is really phenomenal, I think, not only advice, but also way of looking at how AI is going to expand, obviously, the way people use, and obviously the way people now probably don't need to learn any language, pretty much. It's all about now knowing what you want to do, and everything should be now done automatically for you. So that's really fantastic. And I think that will really revolutionize every single industry, because it's going to democratize access to any tool to anybody. So looking now forward at the future of AI, and so obviously you mentioned that probably the roadmap, we should only look 6 months ahead, but wondering if you still have a couple of predictions about the future of AI and how AI is going to change the role of product managers, of designers, of customer success leaders in the next 3 to 5 years.
I think they're all going to converge into like roles, which is just going to become, I don't actually know what the final title will be, but it'll probably be just like product builder or something like that, right?
Yeah.
Where like, so like, I think like historically, most people were kind of, that phrase they use, like a T-shaped person, which is they've got some broad knowledge, but they're really deep on design or CSS or Ruby or whatever it might be, right? Product principles. I think everyone, like the future version of the T-shape is extremely deep because of AI, and there'll still be some specialty, right? There will still be people who are brilliant at, haptic feedback design in an iPhone app, or like mesh gradient design via CSS, right? Some stuff AI will not replace, but everyone will be broadly capable and dangerous in most of the roles, which means I think most of the roles in functions will converge into one. So in product, what that means is PMs, EMs, designers, and whoever else, engineers, just raw product engineers, they'll all become just this general product builder. Some will be particularly great at AI, some will be particularly great at UI or whatever. But I think like the idea that you have to have like different functions and roles and job specs and all that, I think will fade away. I think the same thing will probably happen in, like, say, the customer facing team. I think the world of like a BD or an SD or an AE, an RM, like, a CSM and all that, I think they're all just going to like merge into just like, let's just say some sort of customer person, right? Customer agent, if you like. And they'll be the person who's just kind of in charge of customer stuff. And all of these people will need to be like AI native, and they'll all need to like know their way around an AI stack that backs up how they work, right? So the engineers and the designers will both need to know how Claude Code works, or Lovable or Codex or whatever. And similarly, like all the sales and support and CSM people, they'll all need to know their way around an AI enabled CRM and perhaps a Fin type customer agent or whatever. So I think like you're going to see this generally speaking, you're going to see two things. Like I think there'll be convergence within functions, so less specialization. And then there'll be a type of generalist renaissance where like there will be like people who can do lots of things will become useful again. I often like joke about, you and I are probably both old enough to remember like the job title webmaster. Like back in the day, you were kind of, what was a webmaster? Well, they knew Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, WordPress, a bit of HTML, but it was like, but that was what they were. They just kind of like, I just owned a web stuff. I think that's actually going to come back around again in a sense, right? It's almost like we've rebundled in those spaces. So that's how I think it's going to play out in terms of like the roles in a software company. And I think the people who will win on that side will be people who are willing to let go of their specialization in order to become an AI-enabled generalist. And the people who lose in that world will be the ones who cling onto, for desperate hope, they'll cling on to the few edge case things that they're uniquely good at, but they refuse to kind of look further afield. They're like, no, I'm an iOS guy. I'm never going to learn how to use blah, blah, blah. When in reality, like we can all write bits of code now. And like even our CS team, even our own customer support team are now fixing bugs. Like, and that's like literal frontline customer support reps fixing bugs via Cursor or Devon or whatever, right? Like that's the attitude and the mindset it takes, because when you can't be precious about like, oh, that's not my job or anything like that. AI has changed all of that.
That's such a fascinating answer. Thank you so much for sharing that. So maybe now we will end on two quick fire questions, if you don't mind, and really appreciate the conversation. I think it was beyond insightful for people to rethink about the evolution of the organization, of their process, of their innovation. So thank you for this 360 view that was absolutely phenomenal, and many different concrete frameworks that everybody can now apply to their own journey. So if you had to summarize Intercom's AI journey in one word, what would it be?
Chaotic.
And great at the same time, I'm sure, given the passion that
yeah, okay. I could say loads more, but like I don't know. I will say in general, like, so the word is chaotic, and my only explanation is just like learn to embrace the chaos, because it's not going to get chill anytime soon.
That can be one of your company values. So yeah. And so now, if you could automate one decision that you make regularly, what would it be?
That I make regularly?
Yes.
In work or personal?
It can be both, whatever you prefer. Or one each if you want.
I think I would say I would love to have a proper AI that could decide what I eat when I eat and keeps me on a nutritional sort of within certain limits would be great. I'd really appreciate that. And then I think professionally, I guess I think that probably the most painful decisions we make are regularly around like how much bespoke stuff should we do for any given customer. So like we have some extremely high profile customers that we really like, but as they grow and they age, they can get quite specific with their needs. And a lot of the times we'll do it, but then it's just every single one of those things comes at a carry cost. So I guess, yeah, like understanding the ratio of the value of having the customer, the value of their revenue relative to both the build cost and the carry cost of the bespoke stuff that we've done is a very frequent challenge. And your attitude towards it depends on like where in the quarter are we, how much, who's the customer, am I in a good humor today? Do I like the team? It could be any of these variables. And so if I could have somebody just take all that off my plate, it'd be great.
Do you think AI has already helped you on that, or?
It does it. Like I will say, like, it's really hard. Like I was literally just talking with a customer earlier who had, a prospect earlier who had an amazing experience with Finn, by his words, on one of our like high profile customers. He said, I asked it 7 questions, 7 answers, blah, blah. Because of that, I'm reaching out because I really want to stick this. I want this Finn thing for me. Now, it's really hard. That doesn't show up with any UTM code. There's no like Google Analytics dashboard that says that happened. But like having high profile customers who love Finn and have a great Finn deployment is extremely, extremely valuable. AI can't tap into that. It's like an intuitive thing. Like, maybe I could go around and start accrediting, oh, we only won this customer because of that. But, it's also lossy. It's like kind of who bought your product because of the billboard. You never really know. So like some of the stuff we do in terms of like word of mouth or like branding, there's still a bit of a trust fall that is required. And I think AI, my fear is if we asked AI to do that, it wouldn't see that stuff. So it would overweight other things. And before you know, we'd make all the wrong choices.
Yeah, okay, very clear. Last one, do you have any advice, whether it's something to read, whether it's something to listen to for the audience, if they want to keep learning more about AI? Is there one advice you would give them?
Like the Stripe Press book, An Oral History of AI, is really good if you're trying to understand where we came from. The other things I'd say is we do genuinely, if you found any of this interesting, if you go to ideas.fin.ai, we share all our ideas about everything that we're thinking and seeing, everything from like the changes we made in design and engineering, all that sort of stuff. We share it all. If you're really into the deeper aspects of AI, go to finai.ai/research and you'll find literally everything from like how to post-train an LLM model all the way over to like why our RAG is so good or anything in between. So like we share so much that if you found this interesting, you'll find any of that interesting. And if you're looking for an actual good book, I'd recommend the Stripe Press Oral History of AI.
This is so great that you do that on your website. I love that. That's incredible value for everybody. Love it. Well, Des, that was such a great conversation. Thank you so much for sharing all of your innovation, your challenges, your insight. That was really, really great. So thank you so much once again, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you.